Hey guys, here we are again. We just finished session number 2. Want to thank everybody that has subscribed and also everybody that's viewing the videos. We would love comments though. Please let us know what you think of our hand analysis, also our player profiling, etc. We definitely want to answer questions and also be possibly ask you guys questions.
Yeah, we're brand new at videos, so anything that we could do to improve the videos in the future, like the lighting, that's something we're going to work on and stuff like that. You know, let us know so we can make the videos better in future sessions.
All right. With that being said, this is gonna be a much shorter video. We had a much shorter session tonight. We both did win, and for the amount of hours we played, 4 hours, and I was up 186. Ara was up 115. Both over the average that we're looking to hit. Wasn't anything great. I mean, I had pretty much just a slow upward dwindle. No bad beats. Won the hands I was supposed to win. Ara has one interesting hand because he actually started negative again today and then had a nice little comeback. So we'll go over that one hand a little bit later. With that being said, we want to kind of go over the table because our table tonight was completely a 180 from our table last night. Last night, everybody was fun, happy, having a good time. It was almost like it was a Friday night. People were drinking, blind betting, where tonight we were at a table where pretty much anyone that was talking at the table was just criticizing everyone else. It was almost
mostly
like...
me.
They're mostly criticizing Ara for all his comments, and he just likes to talk a lot at the table, and he definitely got under the skin of guys, 2 guys on the table, for no reason at all, just because I guess they just didn't like him. But with that being said, there was nothing exciting. The rest of the table wasn't talking at all, and the 2 guys that were criticizing, not much to say about them other than they just... just miserable.
But let me add, just because it was a much tighter table than yesterday and a very different type of table, it doesn't mean the skill level of the players at the table were better. I would say actually the average skill level at the table was very, very low, even for a 1-2 table. And at one point I was down $300, but that's just because things just weren't going good for me, and that's just what happens sometimes. But I was able to make a comeback because of many frequent mistakes of the players over the next few hours. So I would just like to highlight one of the hands that I played, and let's see if you guys would have played it the same way as me.
Sure. And before he starts, one thing I would say, out of the 10 players, we're 2 of them obviously, and there was at least 4 of them that were the most passive players in the world, and they're the easiest to play against. They're the kind of player that the pot could be $100, and if you bet 15 and they have nothing, they just fold. It's not even a thought to raise or to just call and flow and see what happens on the turn. They just have nothing. They immediately fold. So those 4 players are so easy to play against. If they ever put money in the pot, to just get away.
Exactly.
There's no reason to ever play against them when they put money in the pot, because you can just make small bluffs against them all day.
Yeah, they're easy to read, and you can win lots and lots of small pots, which is... somewhat equivalent to playing at a table with the crazy guy, where you can have a chance of winning that huge pot. This table is very different. You can wait for lots and lots of small mistakes and kind of outplay them on many, many hands.
You don't need huge hands to win pots. Although the pots are much bigger with the crazy guy, you have to make a hand or you're never going to beat him. With these guys...
And with the crazy guy, sometimes you can lose hundreds or even $1,000 on one table, because you're going to be in enormous pots with them, and sometimes it comes down to a 50-50 or 60-40 situation.
Yeah, it's much better to be able to pretty much bluff $15 to win $50 and $60 pots all day, and they just keep folding. There's just never any pressure or any stress. All easy decisions.
Yeah, I was pretty confident I was making a comeback, and for once he was not in for $500 today, which is like the first time in the last maybe 5 times we played. Anyway, on to the hand breakdown. I had 4-5 of hearts on the button. 4-5 of hearts. So a bunch of people limped in, which was very common. And I raised to $15 on the button. I raised, one, because I like to stay aggressive. I like to have a loose, aggressive image at the table, and I feel like it induces mistakes for my opponents in the future, not just in this hand, but in future hands too. And how many people called that? I think it was 3 callers.
Yeah, I think
it was the guy in the 3 seat, the guy next to him, and it was the the guy that was very, very new to poker, obviously.
So with that being
the
said,
guy that he nicknamed my sister.
Extremely passive, had no clue.
Yeah.
One of the bullies that was just trying to criticize everybody, and an older guy that was just as straightforward as can be.
Yeah, that guy. So now there's $63 in the pot minus the $5 rake is $58 in the pot. So the flop comes out very, very good for me. So I got an open-ended straight draw with a 6-7 on the flop, and there was also a jack on the flop, okay? And the jack was a heart, giving me a backdoor flush draw. So I love when I have a straight draw or a gut shot straight draw to also consider the backdoor flush draw. I think that adds some extra equity, and it's very fun, and you know, I just consider it. It is real. These backdoor flush draws happen.
At a 1-2 table, most of the other players never consider a backdoor flush draw.
Yeah, I just call it a flush draw.
Unless they happen to have a strong hand and it turns, and then they realize on the river, oh wow, I also made a flush. They're not thinking they have a backdoor flush draw. So usually if you make a backdoor flush draw, you're good. You don't have to worry about them having a bigger one.
So, first guy checks, second guy checks, and the guy that was new to the table, we'll just call him my sister because that's how he referred to him. He said it's like playing against your sister. So he comes out and he bets $20. Now my plan was, after he checked, I was going to put out a decent bet of about $30 to $40 because it was a very favorable flop. But since he bet 20, I wasn't sure if anybody else on the table was going to check raise him. So my plan changed to being a little bit conservative, because I do have a draw, and letting him keep the lead. Letting your opponents keep the lead when you have a draw is a very, very important concept, especially when you're in position, because if I did hit my draw, if I did hit a 3 or 8 on the turn, I want him to be able to bet again on the turn without any fear. My hand was very hidden, in my opinion. He definitely wouldn't think I had 4-5 if a 3 came. And he was also the type of player to not even consider me having a straight if an 8 came. He just didn't think like that. So I called the 20, the turn came, and it was an 8. It was an 8 of hearts, giving me also a flush draw. So now I had the low end of the straight and a flush draw. And my opponent checked this time. I knew he had a very weak hand. He probably had a 1-pair hand or a straight draw at this point. And I just assumed that he probably had a jack since he bet on the flop. So when he checked, I just instantly threw out 2 green chips. I did this because, like I said in my last video, it's just so easy to call. He had a tendency to call whatever the bet was, as long as it wasn't like obscenely big. And 2 green chips are very, very easy to call, and I definitely wanted to call from 1 pair. So just making it very easy, flipped in 2 green chips, and he also kind of mimicked me, and he flipped in 2 green chips. It was just the thing to do. So as I'm making a value bet, I want to make it very easy for my opponents to call, so I bet 50, he called. Onto the river, and it paired the board. That's not what I wanted to see. But I wasn't so worried. He instantly went all in for $178, I believe. Was that the amount?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah, I think it was at $178. And my first instinct was to call right away, but I thought I would give myself a chance to think about it. So I was pretty sure one of the 2 cards in his hand was a 7. So just to recap, the board was 6, 7 jack with an 8 on the turn, giving me a straight, and another 7 on the river. So I was pretty sure one of his 2 cards were a 7. He was the type of player that if he had a 7, he would definitely put all his chips in because he would think, oh, I have a good hand now. The thing to do is to bet. And that was kind of his way of thinking. But what I was really considering, instead of just snap calling and ignoring my first instinct, was I was trying to consider what is the other card in his hand. Was the other card in his hand a 6, or was the other card in his hand an 8? And he kind of made a comment on the turn saying, alluding to the fact that he probably should not be calling this $50. He kind of like, when he tossed it in, he's like, making a loose call, I shouldn't call this, or something along those lines. And because he said that, it gave me even more confidence that the other card in his hand wasn't a 6 or an 8. I still took my time to think about it. I probably took about 60 seconds to think about it. And then I finally made the call. The other players on the table kind of thought that I was indecisive about my hand, and I probably should have called very quickly. And they kind of saw me taking my time as me being not confident in my hand, or me being indecisive, or me not having a good handle on the situation. And that wasn't the case, but I don't mind the players thinking about me like that, because I think it helps my image in future hands, and they think I'm the type of player to be a little bit more confused about situations than I actually am. I was just taking the time, on the off chance he actually did have a 6 or an 8, if he might say something about his hand, or he might give me some kind of like clear indication that he had a full house, I would have given myself a chance to fold. But anyway, we're up to 10 minutes in the video. We don't want to keep this so long, so we'll just say goodnight here. Yeah. Thanks for watching and subscribing. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do one quick thing here, especially with new players that you can tell. The guy that I called plays like his sister. They are trying to win, but they're just so new at the game that, you know, you can tell right away that they're new. They are never, in what they say, trying to deceive you.
Yes, I agree.
Players that are experienced will always try to deceive you, and they will say different things, and you have to try to figure that out. But when a brand new player, and you can definitely tell within the half hour, 45 minutes, who is a brand new player.
And a really good point was my hand yesterday, my set of 2s. He actually kind of went through the hands. He said, hey, you know, if you got a pair, you know what I mean, like blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but if you got a set, you're like, you're good. You know, you can just stick it in, you know what I mean? Like, you have nothing to worry about if you have a set. And he was like making that comment honestly. And since I did actually have a set, I realized that he's actually being honest about his hand. So Ray actually brings up a really good point.
And that's the thing is, when you know that they are being honest, you really need to listen. Because one simple little word here or there, whether it's on the flop, the turn, or the river, really does give a lot of information about their hand, because they're not trying to deceive you. They're being honest when they're making their decision. They really don't know what to do. So when a new player is being honest, listen to what he says, and I mean, it's probably 90% a tell. You know, out of all tells, it is a tell that you can go with. Now, you know, don't use that as your only tell. Obviously, he still had a straight, but with that being said, we're going to get out of here. Please leave us comments, ask us questions, and we're going to be off for a couple of days. We'll probably get back on, this is Tuesday night around 2 a.m. We'll probably get back and play at some point, either on Thursday or Friday. So until then, you guys have a good night. Thanks.
All right, good night, guys.